Hello there. Good morning. Hey, Maricela.
Morning. How are you doing?
Welcome, people. Welcome back to another wedding safety update, the wedding safety show with Alison and Maricela. Welcome. So if you haven't seen one of our safety updates before, let me introduce myself. I'm Alison Ellis of Floral Artistry and RealFlowerBusiness.com. And this is my lovely friend, Maricela Ehmann of Ehmann Events.
Hello.
Maricela is a really excellent wedding planner and a safety, I don't want to call you a safety expert because I don't think you would call yourself a safety expert, but she is my safety expert in my life. And we are here today to talk to you about just this week in wedding safety. And since things are moving so rapidly with what's allowed, what's not allowed, what was cool last week, maybe not so cool this week. We're coming in live again this week to just keep you informed and keep you updated. The real life examples is sort of our theme today, since we're weeks and weeks into this in terms of Vermont weddings having some guidelines to be open and a few weddings happening or people planning events. I know Maricela had some real life site visits and some real life planning experience during the COVID. So I want to throw it to you, Maricela, and let us know what's going on in the real life with couples as you are moving forward planning right now.
Yeah, so we are actually moving forward with a couple of weddings so far, and considering taking couples who may have been displaced here and there on a case-by-case scenario there. But these couples that we do have, one of them we have for October in the southern Vermont area, and we kind of took a pause on planning as a good chunk of people have, without really knowing what was going to be happening. And now the decision was made to move forward. We got together at the site to actually logistically plan it all out according to the guidelines. And for this particular case, I felt really warm inside with the fact that my couple is, determined to follow all of the guidelines, apply them where they're needed, make adjustments, make changes to their guest counts, to their timing, their layout, all of it. So they're very, very willing to do this, as well as the venue is has been preparing with their safety guidelines, has their safety coordinator already set and ready and trained and on top of it all, and everyone's really on it, and we're all making adjustments, and we're all learning obviously through this, but keeping that communication open, as we have stated before in these videos, is really, really key, and everyone being on top of it and on board. So the team is there, and so we're moving forward. Some of the adjustments that we're making, just even from, canceling all the food for cocktail hour because it just didn't make sense at that time. And tent is bigger, tables are smaller, those kind of things. One of the suggestions that I gave my couple was to survey their guests or include it in their RSVP form, in their RSVPs, and send them actually a little bit sooner, is to ask their guests if they're willing to sit with another household or if they prefer to sit on their own. So
good advice.
Yeah. So there's just an extra line on your little RSVP card. So just asking some questions, and you can do the same thing for transportation. Either you do it on your website or you do it on the RSVP. Do they want a ride to the site? And if they do want to ride to the site, are they willing to ride with other people, or do they prefer on their own? And we're making all of the adjustments to meet what's going to make these clients feel comfortable.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I want to back up to an important thing you said when you talked about, being enthusiastic and feeling warm and fuzzy about the fact that your couple is willing to make the necessary adjustments and changes, right? They're not resistant to the safety guidelines to keep people safe. you mentioned the safety coordinator, that the venue already has their safety coordinator. So I want to just, again, in case anybody's never seen any of our videos before, the safety coordinator is a super important piece of your wedding or event. They're the person people will check in with, right? They're the person who will help distribute safety reassurance and guidelines. Mm-hmm. And let's not underestimate the importance of again, we want to be actually safe as possible, but the appearance of safety is as important to your guests, right? And so you want to put that out there. So again, I'm not saying you should pretend you're being safe just for looks, but what I'm saying is it's important to, right? I just want to make that clear. What I want to say though is you want to put it out there as being the way that you will make guests feel comfortable, right? The way they'll feel comfortable is when they actually understand, oh, I'm going to sanitize my hands or whatever the things are. Like, I understand that other people are being treated and cared for this way, and I am as well. Mm-hmm. Like, I had a dentist appointment this week. I was a little on the fence. Do I really need my teeth cleaned? And but our cases are dropping here in Vermont at the moment, right? So if you're watching this live, this is true. In the future, right? We don't have a crystal ball. So my husband said, well, if you don't feel safe going now, when will you? And I thought, well, that's a point. So I went to the dentist. And as soon as I walked, right, it's like, you have to call. You can't just walk in. All the seats are like, you can't sit here. No sitting in this waiting room. And someone squirts some hand sanitizer right when you walk in. It's the reassurance, like I'm not really touching anything, right? Except the chair. If they wipe down the chair, we're good. But it's the appearance, right? That if my hands are clean, I feel like everyone else who walked in here had the same treatment. So anyway, off my soapbox about the safety coordinator, but that's what the safety coordinator is. It's that person who greets you at the retail store or wherever you're walking into, who's like, hi, here's how we're going to keep people safe.
I know, I even had that at grocery shopping, it's like, oh, hi, welcome. And the young lady who's in the front, sanitizer? Like, got it. Thank you very much. Because you know that she's telling that to everybody who is approaching. And so if this coordinator or even someone else at this coordinator at this particular site assigns to check people in, it's like, welcome, you're in such party. And, here's what the restrooms are, sanitizers, such and such. So we are going to, we're planning to have little hand sanitizer favors and masks available upon arrival, so that people who did not bring them can then grab them. As there is in this, so this is in Manchester, and so the town of Manchester actually has a mandatory requirement for the use of face masks inside of establishments. So that's something that we have to adhere to.
Yes. So I was sharing this document I'm working on with a sort of client acceptance of risk and explaining sort of my policies and my procedures moving forward, my promises to the client. And I shared it with a friend who does a lot of proofreading for me on my courses and stuff. And she had some great feedback. We had a great back and forth about, like, should it say this or should it say that? And she was like, I don't understand why it says you have to wear a mask, because she's in a state where everybody has to wear a mask. Mm-hmm. And so she goes, I don't understand why you have that in there. So everybody's different in terms of whatever state they're in. Here in Vermont, where we're focused, you don't have to wear a mask indoors unless it's mandated by either the business or the town, right, that you might be in. So Manchester mandated, that means you're wearing them. Stowe. So you've been talking to real life clients. I've been talking to some real life clients. One of mine is doing a smaller wedding in Stowe where there is a mask mandate, right? So you'll be wearing a mask when you're in the presence of others. So inside or outside, if you're in the presence of others. So everyone has to know what's going on in their particular space, in their particular area. What was interesting to me is actually the venue didn't tell my customer about this mask mandate. So I did, right? Mm-hmm. So we have to be really clear, even when we're talking with our venue, like, we need to gather information. We need to ask the questions. Will we be wearing masks? Now, aside from what your venue says or what your town says, Dr. Fauci says, wear a mask inside, people. He even says, don't gather inside, right? So we have to be more vigilant and safer. I want to say more safe to be safer than sometimes what is allowed, right? Just because it's allowed doesn't necessarily mean it's a good idea for your safety or your guest safety. And so that's just something to keep in mind. Let me let you get back to your site visits and what you're seeing, what's really happening out there.
Well, another thing that was discussed was transportation. And I don't think we've touched too much on transportation for weddings and events. Obviously, if there is going to be alcohol served, transportation is, goes in hand with that. And for this particular client, I actually ended up talking to Brent from Tri-State Transportation in Rutland, who tunes in. Hi.
And he said, I watched your safety show. It's like, oh, we have to make sure we go live tomorrow.
And, there's a lot that they're addressing. There is, I would suggest to either talk to the person that you have already booked for your transportation, or if you held on that, to talk to the companies that are available, because there is certain guidelines that they have to meet, and it kind of coincides with the transportation for schools. If you do something that he did, point out and was like, okay, you need to really look at this, is the fact that school buses have to follow school bus procedures or school procedures for transporting children, even when they're transporting adults. And this is, if I got it wrong, he can fill me in, but it was one person every other seat, which then reduces your bus load to about 13 people max. So if you're only transporting 13 people on these really large buses, is it really the point to transport, to do it this way, instead of maybe providing smaller shuttles or vans that can then transport individual families? Is not only are they going to feel more comfortable, it's actually going to be easier on your transportation vendor to do things like after every ride, clean all the surfaces and disinfect and that sort of thing.
Right. For the timing. And I don't really know. I have a friend who's a wedding planner, and I've learned a lot about how much I don't know about weddings from talking with her. And transportation is definitely one of those things, right? Like it is so complicated. So I don't know anything about like the cost, but I would almost imagine that individual shuttles might even cost less than having to do the same bus back and forth with the disinfecting. But I don't know, maybe I'm totally off base there.
Depending on what vehicle is offered, the amount of luxury associated with that vehicle, that sort of thing is really where you're going to get your pricing. It might affect your pricing if you're being charged at an hourly rate.
Okay.
Because you're going to have to get started a little bit earlier with your transportation with these limitations. So if you're transporting smaller groups, even if you do have a smaller guest count, even 50 people, if you're doing 2s and 4s, it takes a little bit longer to get everyone on site. So just make sure your timeline. And those are things that we're doing for this particular event. Besides that, creating something that we were doing is creating little pockets where people can go outside to sit and kind of get away from the tent or having to wear a mask if they wanted to, go find a little corner, get some fresh air, those kind of things. Just being really more guest conscious than you ever have been before. As a couple too, you're really focused on not only creating this day of celebration, but making sure that all your friends and family are very comfortable being there.
That is so I've been doing weddings I started my business in 2002. So 2020 is supposed to be my 19th wedding season, right? And I do have a few on the books still who are doing smaller events. But one of the things that I have said repeatedly to my clients for many, many years. So first of all, the wedding is about you guys getting married, right? That's the most important thing. But when you're hosting a wedding celebration, right? When you're hosting I just almost threw my coffee off the cliff here. When you're doing a wedding celebration, an actual party, you're bringing people together. You are successful. You've had a successful wedding when your guests feel cared for. When your guests feel hosted, cared for, and thought about, that is what makes a successful wedding. So it doesn't matter if you have, you know, top to bottom, high end everything. If the personal feeling isn't there, if they don't feel personally thought about. So it's really important to just keep that in mind. It doesn't matter how big or how small, it's, you know, the heart of the event that really counts.
And you're going to be seeing that kind of be pulled into 2021 as well for weddings that were postponed. You know, acknowledging the fact that your guests took the time to move their dates, maybe had to change flights, hotels, maybe we're out of money, and you know, making those changes and so on. And to, you know, there's going to be different ways to show gratitude to your guests for them kind of making those adjustments to then be with you for that special day.
Yeah. And I think you bring up such a super great point that it's going to be stressful for the guests in some ways, right? And really, really important to acknowledge that. Jerry Seinfeld has a new stand-up out. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but it is, yes, highly recommend. And so spoiler alert, he starts it with, you know, talking about what everyone just experienced just before they arrived to sit down in these seats. And he points out the incredible stress that they went through, right? Who has the tickets? You have the tickets. Are we going to eat before? Are we going to eat after? Are we going together in the same car? Are we going to, you know, like the whole, and then you're finally there. And it's just, it's very, you know, very Seinfeld, but the seeing people, right? He sees people, he sees through and what's happening. And what he's acknowledging is that you are all here by the skin of your teeth after lots of arguing with the person you came with, trying to coordinate all this stuff. And it was a pain for you to get here, right? And he acknowledges that right off the bat, and it's brilliant. And what you are saying is basically the same exact thing, that your customers rather, excuse me, I'm always used to talking about clients, your guests, right? They've been through a lot to get to your wedding. They want to be here so bad that they're coming despite a pandemic. All right. So just props to these people who are doing that for you, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I want to just interrupt for a second with two questions that came in. So Michelle is wondering, how do you hear the lawnmower going now? Super loud. He's like, crank it up. How would you handle the quarantine requirements for wedding guests coming out of state to Vermont for a wedding? And then Whitney has a question. Hi, Whitney. She is not in Vermont, right? But so what she has to say is, if a client is not following the state's rules, can we be held responsible in any way for providing services as a vendor? So I think these two are both related to guests following rules or vendors following rules. You know, other people, OPP, other people's pandemics. Like, what are we going to do the way other people handle their pandemic, you know, etiquette?
Yeah. Well, first of all, with the quarantine requirements, you know, for, you know, using a real life example, this particular client, and actually the rest ones that I still have, I've provided them with the exact, you know, ACCD website, you know, copy and
travel, yep,
everything, travel restrictions, and let them know that this is, you know, non-negotiable. At least in my book, it's non-negotiable. They need to meet these guidelines, and provided them with areas where these their quarantine requirements are going to be checked. So when you lodge, okay, that's going to be huge. You do have to check in with the hotel. Hotels have specific guidelines and restrictions for taking people into their lodging establishments. Okay, so that's a huge one. You do need to fill out an affidavit or some type of, you know, checkbox. Yes, I don't, you know, I haven't been around someone. I followed the, you know, the right criteria, and they do note where you're coming from, because they do have your address and they can, you know, refuse service to you. So if that guest is coming in and they're coming in from a pretty highly affected area, and this is noticed, and they're like, okay, well, you just arrived and we know you flew in because you just told me that. Right. I'm now quarantining for 14 days in this establishment. and they can refuse service to you if you're not going to be doing that. So you can lose out your guests on that day. So we're making it very, very well known to all of the guests by putting it on the wedding website. Verbatim, this is what you're going to be held, what is required and how you're going to be held.
It again ties into your guests will have gone through some sort of ordeal to get here, right? So you don't want them to now get there and have a problem. Yeah. So communication. So someone is asking, could you post a link for the requirements in the comments? Yes, you can also find this right at accd.vermont.gov, and you will find the cross-state travel requirements right there. So you can find them anytime right there. So accd.vermont.gov is where you're headed, Erin.
And they're updated on a weekly basis. So they've been adding different areas that people can come from.
Yep. And are they doing the updating in red on that page as well? I know they're doing that for our guidelines for reopening.
It's just the map updates.
Oh, I see. Okay.
The map on a weekly basis. In regards to Whitney's comment.
Yes. So Whitney's comment is about, could we be held responsible if others are not following the state's rules?
You are a business. And you are held up to certain requirements for operating your business, just like a restaurant. Whitney's comment.
Yes. So Whitney's comment.
Hi, sorry, it cut away, I think.
So sorry, I went to go help answer Erin, and then everything went all crazy on my end. I started playing us. I'm so sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Amateur mistake over here.
So you as a business owner are held up to certain, standards for your particular business. Just for example, restaurants have to follow certain health and safety guidelines to maintain open, to have their licensing and their operation permits to move forward with certain aspects. So if you're a licensed and permitted vendor, you have a responsibility to move forward with the way that your state, your area, your city requires you to do. Yeah. So if you are aware that a vendor or another vendor, let's say you're not the venue, maybe you're a photographer, and the venue is letting your client just do whatever, it is not only your responsibility as a professional, but also your responsibility as a human being and a member of this community to say something.
Yeah.
That's in my book, Yeah.
That's going to be, I think, the hardest thing for us as vendors moving forward is where's our out? What's our etiquette? How do we handle this, right? So this ties into, again, what's happening in real life examples. We're hearing from photographers I showed up for an event and it only had 25 people, and then all of a sudden a bunch more people came, the masks came off, the social distancing stopped, and I felt like the walls were closing in on me. Then someone else said that they felt like not only were people getting into her personal space and not respecting social distancing, even when she reminded them, but she felt she was aggressively brushed up against, you guys. I can feel the collective anger out there, by the way, but brushed up against more than once by two different people at this event in a passive aggressive, or I will just go aggressive way of rejecting her boundaries and rules and business policies, right, around how she can work safe as a photographer. So that's not okay, right? It's not okay for somebody to get in your face or in your space at a wedding, especially if you communicated that with your client. So this is what I'm working on. You and I have been talking about this for weeks. Aside from the liability of well, you're not going to hold me responsible if anybody's sick at your wedding, right? I don't have any liability around that. I'm so over that, right? It's so yeah, okay, whatever. That's so April's concern at this point. Now it's, how do I get out of here, right? If I can tell this is trouble, how do I make it clear to you before I show up what I'm required? What I'm requiring, what I need to do my job the right way, and what I'm going to do if it's impossible for me to do these things and stay safe, and when I'm going to leave, and who I'm going to tell, or if I'm just going to walk right out. Everybody's got to have their own rules around this, but you should absolutely feel like it's okay to say to somebody, I'm not comfortable moving forward like this. I have to leave. Yeah. I cannot do this.
If you don't feel safe, remove yourself from that unsafe situation. And that's just, regular life. So this is included in that. A lot of vendors do have clauses already in their contracts that state that if they're unable to perform their services on the day of because of something outside of their control, they're allowed to leave that said location. So it's all just takes, talk to your lawyer, to your attorney, or whoever else, and make those slight wording adjustments so that it does include the aspect of a safe space in a pandemic.
Yep.
And people respecting your wishes for your health and safety as well.
Yeah. And I think of it also, aside from whether it's a legal contract or a legal addendum, which it is, right? Arguably it is. It's more of a business policy even, right? Like, you don't have to necessarily look at it like, am I allowed to do this? Right now, at least in Vermont, right? You're allowed to set your own safety protocol and policies, right? And so if someone is violating that policy, you should not have to feel like, well, I didn't have a lawyer vet this thing, so I can't enforce it, right? You should leave. Your health is more important than anything else. And one of the tips I'm using is for my own self, right? Because I'm a solopreneur. How would I want my employee to be treated? And that's the policy that's for me. Would it be okay for my employee to put up with this? And if it's not okay for somebody else, if I wouldn't allow somebody that is under my care, right, under my business umbrella to put up with it, then I don't put up with it, right? So that's why you guys as vendors need this kind of policy. And if you're a couple planning a wedding or an event, you need to understand what their policies are and you need to protect them. It is your job. Let me just make sure it's clear. It is your job as the host of your event to keep your vendors, attendees, everybody feeling comfortable and safe, okay? It is not okay to just think you're going to move forward. And so, for example, the photographer who's having people brush up against her, where is the couple saying, back up off her? Where is the couple? That's what has to happen, right? Elizabeth, hi, Elizabeth. She says, this is the problem in any abusive situation. It is. It's like, I was was it you I was talking to? Who was I talking to? I think it was actually my friend I was talking to yesterday. I think that it is crazy as it is to compare the two, but it's actually not. It's sort of like sexual harassment. Like, it when you're in it. Yeah. You feel it, right? Like, you get that, whoa, that's what it's like. That's what it's going to be like when you're on site and all of a sudden you're unsafe. It's not going to be an overt offense necessarily. It may be. Then it's easier to leave, right? If it's overt, you leave. But it may be subtle. It may be this subtle thing where you're like, I don't feel safe. So it's going to be that tingle, that spidey sense that goes off where you're like, I am in a not great situation. And so I think the idea of, like, in any kind of abusive situation, it's the same thing. It's like when you're in a place where you're not in control and you're not safe, you know what that feels like. So you can recognize this.
Having that plan for what you're going to do is absolutely necessary. And I know it's something that we've repeated over and over and over. It's like plan, have a plan for it all. And even, I've planned everything out to a T, exactly what I would say for certain comments and certain situations and how I would get myself out. Everything's there. And I only have a couple of events planned. There's, the site that we were at, this is the only wedding that they're having this year. That's right. It. But they're still meeting every single guideline. They've planned it out. They know how they're going to address it. It might just be one, but that one is all that it takes to cause it.
Yep. So 2 things that we had on our list here. One was your great advice to, as you're planning your wedding right now, live in the now, plan in the now. So I'm going to let you expand on what you mean by that.
Well, it's just there's been conversations about people or with other vendors talking about weddings that are going to be happening in the fall. And guest counts haven't changed. They haven't changed layouts or haven't addressed timing or anything. So they're just proceeding forward as if they're going to be allowed this higher guest count, that there won't be any social distancing in place, that they can still have this cocktail hour aspect. And, we have to adhere to the rules that are present, because those are the ones that we have. And so those are the ones that you can actually use and apply, and not think of the possibilities in the future. If you are addressing or planning your event to what the current guidelines are, you can make adjustments in the future if things get a little stricter or they loosen up. It's a little easier to kind of go up or go down from there, versus, thinking that you're going to have this normal event up here, big blown out bash, and then have to bring it down excessively. Then those changes are a lot harder to make very last minute, not only for you, for your guests, but for all your vendors, and even speaking from experience, making last minute adjustments on, pre-COVID, when they're like, oh, I have all these, new RSVPs or all these people who are not coming, and making changes to a floor plan and to seating assignments, 45 minutes before an event start is a headache. Imagine having to reduce a guest count from 200 people down to 50 if things change. Just within weeks it's not something that's feasible at that point.
That's right. So the Inn at the Round Barn in Waitsfield has just chimed in. Good morning. She says, yes, plan for what is now. We have drawn the line at using whatever rules are applicable at 60 days, 60 days prior to the scheduled event. I think that's super smart. It's wonderful that people want to be optimistic and think it's only going to get better from here, right? We're used to we've been rolling like that, especially us wedding pros, right? Things have just been better all the time for a long time. And that's just not the way to think right now. We heard from Anthony Fauci yesterday, who said, we are not doing a good job here in the United States, right? So that means that we need to just stay diligent. States like Vermont who are doing well, we got to keep up the good work. And one of the ways we keep up the good work is not letting our guard down around weddings and events, right? Because this is a key component to keeping the state safe. Events and weddings, gatherings need to be following rules to a T. There is no such thing as a safe event, right? That's not a thing. There are safety guidelines we can follow to make the event safer, but your plan, the document I was working on yesterday about client acceptance of risk, they have the words in there, including the risk of death. Just let's know it, right? Let's just know it, that's what we're talking about here. And it's not playtime. Okay. Another thing that we talked about before we went live is I woke up this morning I have a Facebook group with about 9,000 florists in it right now. And one of them said, I got a positive COVID test and I have a wedding July 15th, or maybe she even had a couple of weddings. And so then what do you do? Right? So not to be the Debbie Downer, but it's the Debbie Downer show. We have to all think, right, about, so a vendor, sick, what do you do? She's got a positive test. So now what does she do, right? She's got to isolate. She's got to get somebody else to do the event. She's got to communicate this. She happens to live in a small town. And so it's already out, right? People already know so transparency. And that's the thing in the comments that people left for her. And I'm hoping she gets well soon. She's not very sick. She's only a little sick right now. She doesn't feel all that bad. The transparency is what people were commending her for over and over again. Thank you for showing up and being transparent, for letting people know. That's how you're going to keep people safe. Another person wrote to me last week, and she said she had a bride test positive, the morning of the wedding, she got the result that she was positive, right? So we have to be prepared for last minute cancellation. We have to be prepared for the whole gamut of, again, the force majeure as vendors, right? We have a force majeure that's unforeseeable. We are now into the foreseeable. So what can you foresee as a vendor, as a guest, as a couple? What can you foresee? And then do your best to plan in the now for that.
Yeah, we're so used to planning for, especially here in Vermont, you just plan for your alternative for weather, because
Right.
that can change very last minute. And so you always have your plan B. But now we're coming up with plan C through like S. Because there's going to be, or there is a potential to have various scenarios that can happen up to the day of. And you just need to be prepared to address those issues if they were to come. What do you do if you get sick? What do you do if one of your employees gets sick? What do you do if someone on the site gets sick or is sick or showing symptoms? What are you going to do? And even, as the example that you just shared with the vendor who found out she was positive, several days prior to this event, having a plan for that too. What do you do as an individual? Because we're all human, we can still get sick or contract the virus and test positive. What adjustments are you going to be making so that you're able to meet your contract, your services for these clients, but also, keep yourself healthy so that you can, take that time to really recuperate and, take that time to really focus on getting healthy again.
Well, and thanks for saying that, because that's again a really important thing. You got to worry about your client in that moment, but you have to be able to just focus on yourself. Even if you don't have symptoms and you don't feel that bad, you have to be able to focus on wellness, right? It looks like I just lost Maricela. I wonder if she lost internet for a second. If she comes back, I'll be able to let her right back in here. I think that, the idea of just keeping it real about what is really happening is, she's back. Hang on, let me bring you in. It's giving me a countdown, 3, 2, 1. There you are.
Really close. Hi.
Now you're normal. You're back. So I was just saying, I think the idea of just really focusing on what's happening in the now, right? Mm-hmm. What is happening, whether you're a vendor, whether you're a couple, and our hearts really go out to anybody who has to reschedule or postpone for the second time, potentially. Some people are really, really hoping for fall because they postponed. I love how you put it. They were displaced, right? They were displaced from their first event. And just how do we keep this idea that safety and consideration can go hand in hand here if everybody works together. The together piece is super duper important.
Absolutely. You're going to be finding kind of a new sense. Yes, obviously, in the past, as couples, you really connect with your vendors, maybe certain ones more than others. But that relationship that you establish with your vendors as you're planning for your events is going to be a stronger bond. It's all founded on trust.
Yeah.
So, moving forward, the connections that you make with your vendors is really, really important, and having that open line of communication and that understanding of what each other needs.
Yeah. And, that kind of ties right back into what Whitney was asking before about what if people are not following the rules when you're on site? What kind of liability do I have? People are taking note right now, y'all, right? People are taking note on what you're liking and what you're not liking on your social media, what you're sharing, what you're not sharing. They're going to take note on whether you are acting safe at an event or not. So if you want to work post-pandemic, it's in your interest, right, to get your act together around this safety stuff now. Right? Get it together. There is no excuse. We literally have been doing this every week for several weeks. There's a whole playlist on YouTube. It's already linked here in the comments. You can get all the safety you need, a buffet of safety, right? You can get all the safety you need. You can be educated on this so that you don't have to, we're all about be smart, stay safe. Don't act dumb. I'm just going to say it plain. Don't act dumb. Don't act like you don't know that there are these rules about quarantining or cross-state travel. Don't act like you don't know that you should wear a mask inside, because you should. Just don't act like you don't know, right? Because we're telling you, you have no excuse not to know. Ignorance is not an excuse anymore. All right, is there anything else you're thinking of? Because I think we have covered most of the things I had written down here.
Yeah, same on my end.
Awesome. So just, we want to make sure everybody knows, stay safe, we're thinking of you, whether you're a guest, whether you're a couple, whether you're a vendor, and we're here to help. If you have questions for us, please let us know. Just, I'm not going to say don't be dumb again. I'm going to say be smart, celebrate safe. Randy says, hi, Randy. She says, great info this morning. Thanks, ladies. Thank you. Thanks for watching.
Sorry, just chiming in just so that Michelle did ask a question about, or a comment about testing. And that is something that you have to consider as a vendor too. Is like, how often are you going to be tested? Because you are going to be coming in contact with a lot more people, or maybe not necessarily the florist, but someone like myself. I already know that I'm committed to having a test post events.
Okay, so let's. I was about to wrap up, but forget the wrapping. We're unwrapping. So because this is really important. So what do you mean by that? Like the day after an event, or what you're thinking?
Within that week. So if I had an event on Saturday, obviously it's the most typical, I will take a test anything between 3 to 7 days post. Just depends on the schedule, but before having another event.
Right.
And me and my schedule, my staff, we're not scheduling ourselves to work in consecutive weekends, so that we are giving we're giving ourselves 2 weeks prior to actually being on site. This is not going to be possible for everybody, but it's what can you do, or how can you plan? When are you having these tests? When are you being tested? How often? And as Michelle mentions, they're free here in Vermont. You just go and get it done. Go through the drive-through. I've actually done it, and so it's not that difficult. And it's just about committing the time and that effort for your safety and the safety of everyone else.
Or just having it occur to you that you should do it because now Maricela's told you that this is a good thing to think about, right? Because it is. And you're right. Like as a florist, part of what I'm defining is I really shouldn't, no one should be having to be in the room when I'm in there. So then I can avoid that sort of unnecessary contact with people or unnecessary room sharing with people. But it's going to be up to me to communicate that with the venue. Not just, I can't rely on my couple to be able to make sure the catering staff will be cleared out of the room. I have to be proactive in communicating that, finding out if and how that's possible. If I have to show up at 6 a.m. to set up a wedding so that I'm not interacting with your staff, I'll do that, right? I'll do whatever I have to do to minimize that. But so the idea that if you have a plan, have thought this out, how do you avoid people? If you don't avoid people, you go and get a test, right? Very good. Excellent. Even better ending than before. So thank you. And thanks for not missing Michelle's question. I totally hadn't read the whole thing. So thank you. So maybe we'll be back again next week. If there's more COVID news, we'll be here. Chances are there will be something else new. Cases are up across the United States, you guys. So be careful out there. Vermonters, keep up the good work, people. Keep up the good work. Yeah.
Wear a mask.
Wear a mask and keep doing whatever you're doing, keep doing it. All right. Thanks so much for joining us. And we'll see you next time with the next safety update. Thanks, Maricela.
Thanks.